Can we just establish that anybody who screamed, "Let's storm the Capitol," I can think of 2 people who did, who was not arrested, didn't spend time in jail.
Was defended by Democrats in the Congress.
Yes, but he wasn't alone. There's another prominent person who did that as well, as I know you know. Didn't get arrested, didn't go to jail. I mean, what can we conclude from that?
Keep moving towards the Capitol. It appears we are taking the Capitol back. Keep marching and don't relax, never relax. Yeah! Break down the barriers and disregard the police. This Capitol belongs to us.
This is Nick Fuentes on January 6th, 1 month after receiving a $250,000 donation from a foreign source that would take his own life that very same day. If you're unfamiliar, Nick is a political streamer that could be best understood as the right-wing version of Hassan Piker. While hundreds of regular people, and several far less notable influencers, including those who never even stepped foot in the Capitol, have all been punished for their involvement on January 6th, somehow Fuentes has been able to evade any and all charges. Multiple of Nick's followers, the latest being Tristan Sarter, have been imprisoned after following Nick's instructions to invade the Capitol. Brandon Straka, who never even stepped foot in the Capitol building, had his home raided by the FBI for just filming a video from the Capitol steps where somebody could be heard shouting "Go, go, go," despite the fact that the speaker was off camera, and both Straka and his family deny that the voice was his. He was still forced to plead guilty to 3 years of probation. Owen Schroyer of InfoWars didn't even say anything to the crowd or approach the entrance to the building, but still served 2 months in prison for simply standing outside the Capitol. If you don't believe me, you can read through his entire case yourself here. It's only a couple of pages. Yet somehow, the self-proclaimed single largest political dissident in the entire country, who the government has every incentive to throw the book at, hasn't had even a single charge brought against him. The DOJ was actually working on a conspiracy indictment against Fuentes, but for some mysterious reason, it was never filed. A month after January 6th, Nick would hold his annual political conference while failing to inform his audience that he was currently under FBI investigation, putting his followers in extreme danger of being targeted as an extremist by the federal government. His second-in-command at the time, Patrick Casey, would go public with the fact that Nick was under investigation, rightfully concerned about the well-being of the attendees. Nick would immediately oust him from the movement and launch a campaign of attacks against the man, labeling him a traitor, intent on destroying his livelihood. According to conference attendees, he would verify each person's legal name by having them show their ID, as well as make each one of them take a photo with him, harvesting exactly the type of information that an informant could use to make a deal with the feds. A few months later, his bank account, which contained the $250,000 donation, was unfrozen, the investigation ended, and the conspiracy case was never filed. Since then, a total of 6 of his followers and former members of his organization have been arrested, leaving many people convinced that he must have taken a deal. There are clearly multiple examples of less influential people who didn't engage in explicit calls for vandalism and trespassing, yet were still targeted and punished. Nick and his followers' response to this is that Nick never entered a restricted area, and therefore the feds just chose to ignore him telling people to break down the barriers and disregard the police.
Break down the barriers and disregard the police. This Capitol belongs to us.
If you know anything about how the feds work, they'll compile a massive list of ridiculous charges which threaten decades of prison time just to force you to plead guilty to a much more lenient sentence. Take FPS Russia as an example, a large gun influencer who was charged with distribution for just giving his girlfriend weed and hit with defacing serial numbers over professionally done camos he had painted on his weapons.
So there's this federal law about defacing or altering serial numbers on firearms, and one of my guns had been Cerakoted, which is a fancy word for like professionally painted by a third-party company. And when they did it, like 2 of the serial numbers now were hard to read. But if you like scratched them hard enough with your fingernail, you could read them again. Like nothing was being hidden, but they were using that as this like modifier It was like when you're playing Magic the Gathering and you like slap down an enchantment, like add 10 years. they were adding the 10-year enchantment onto my sentence because of that. That was 10 years.
They had him facing 30 years of prison time to get him to accept a 2-month sentence. And the government had far less incentive to punish him than they do Nick Fuentes, who claims to be the single largest threat to the system that currently exists. If you think I'm a biased source, why don't you listen to what one of Nick's closest allies, Keith Woods, had to say about the situation?
And that they're sleepwalking into catastrophe. Because, as far as I can tell, someone like Nick Fuentes could easily be perceived as and presented as one of the key organisers of the Stop the Steal rally on the 6th. And following those events on Nick's stream, not only did he not distance himself from the criminal actions of the people that entered Capitol Hill, but he doubled down on support for them and said things that would suggest that he supported these kinds of insurrectionary activities. Now, I'm not very familiar with the legal process, but it seems to me that the system would be keen to pursue someone like Fuentes, and that they may have enough, based on statements he has made publicly, based on the actions of some of his supporters and people associated with him, that they could easily tie him and the America First movement up in very dangerous federal legal proceedings.
At this point, I think it's clear to anybody honest that Nick took a deal with the feds to act as controlled opposition moving forward. He went from distancing himself from proponents of Hitler and Nazism, labeling them as unserious and potentially harmful to any genuine political action.
Look, it doesn't take a test to say you're not a very smart person, and maybe if you are, you have no place in politics. You have no place doing this kind of thing. You're doing far more harm to the cause of good people than you're doing good.
To outwardly proclaiming his love for Hitler and comparing himself to him in speeches. Not to mention the entire Kanye West saga. What's a better way to discredit critics of Israel as mentally ill conspiracy nuts than to have a rapper with a long history of public mental breakdowns, who just released an album detailing his struggles with schizo behavior, be the new face of anti-Zionism?
I see good things about Hitler also. I love everyone, and Jewish people are not going to tell me you can love us, and you can love what we're doing to you with the contracts, and you can love what we're pushing with the pornography. But
it's almost unbelievable how a supposed major enemy of the media was let off scot-free for January 6th, yet there hasn't been any mainstream media coverage on this at all. Something here isn't adding up. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments. Please like the video, please subscribe. There's a lot of good content coming in the future.